for the last several years, we have been very, very focused in a variety of formats, in a variety of ways, to try to think about the idea of conversation, and in doing that, over and over again have conversations that are significant. Significant not just to this university, but significant to Nashville, and occasionally significant in terms of our entire state. Tonight we have one of those, and we're thrilled that you are here for it. Thrilled that you are among the first in this series, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Tom Ingram, who will be the moderator this evening. Most of you know Tom. The world would say that he is the most powerful political figure in Tennessee who does not hold elected office. And with his relationships with our senators and our governor, I think there's a lot of truth to that. He still has strong roots in Washington, but is back here a good bit of the time. And we're thrilled that he's a leader in residence at Lipscomb University with our Civic Leadership Institute. I would tell you, as you think about someone like Tom, he is a Lipscomb graduate, and he does epitomize the reality that students come to a school as a customer, but they leave as a product. Now, that's kind of fascinating, isn't it? That's not the way the rest of the world works. You go to Target to buy milk, you don't leave as milk. You go as a customer, and you leave as a customer. You just have milk with you. But here we have this fascinating moment where people choose us as a consumer, having looked at colleges all over the country, but then something happens, and when they leave, they are us. Well, there's an occasional moment where you're not sure that was a good idea, or we didn't do what we really could have done, but with Tom, we are extraordinarily proud of not only his accomplishments, but the person he is, and we're thrilled to have him again as a part of Lipscomb University. Would you please welcome Tom Ingram?
Thank you, sir. I don't know what it means, but my guest was back there laughing at that introduction. Thank you for coming to the first conversation. I want to thank a couple of people before we get into the program. I want to thank Linda Schatt and her team, Lydia, and Kathy, for all of their help in putting this together. I want to thank the Nelson Leadership Institute, and I want to particularly hear that Sue and Carter are here. Please stand up. The reason we have the Carter Leadership Institute, Sue, Carter, Nelson, and thank you again. I also want to thank the DLC support team, ETS, and others who have worked hard on everything from the mat at our feet to the lights above our head. And I want to thank the Lipscomb Theater Department, which has cooperated with us on use of the stage. We have interrupted their stage prep for their next production, which is Pride's Crossing, which opens here on March 29th. So if you don't like tonight, you can come back on the 29th and see how Pride's Crossing is. But thank you very much for being here. The purpose of these conversations will be to introduce to the Lipscomb community and family, and to the community at large, many of our friends are here tonight, leaders who make a difference. Some of them, like our guest tonight, will be well known. Some of them won't be so well known, but they make a difference just the same. And we're not going to focus on what they're doing today or what their title is. We're going to focus on who they are as people and how they got to where they are and what makes them tick. And so I hope it'll be interesting, but we look forward to your input and ideas as we go along. Feel free to provide that to any of us at the Leadership Institute or via the website, and let us have your ideas as we get into this. It's my pleasure now, despite the fact that you laughed at the introduction, to introduce a good friend, a husband to one of the greatest ladies you'll ever meet, a father to 3 great kids, and just recently a grandfather, a businessman, the former mayor of Knoxville, and as we sit here tonight, the governor of the great state of Tennessee. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Governor Bill Haslam. We're experimenting tonight, so if you need to adjust your chair or do anything, you're welcome to. Before we get into the questions I had planned, I do want to know what it's like to be a grandfather.
I had a friend tell me this, and it's true. It's the one thing in life that's not overrated. It is great.
And what does that mean?
Well, you have your own children when they're born. It's obviously a special moment. But for Chrissy and I, we weren't prepared for the emotion of having a grandchild born. And, today's world of delivering babies is a lot different than when we did. And, of course, got everybody in the room until near the last moment when we tactfully left. But then we're waiting outside the door, and literally we hear our grandson Wyatt start crying, and we both start crying immediately. I mean, so the emotion of it was I wasn't prepared for.
Great.
Part of it's the joy of seeing your children be joyful.
Well, give Will, Hannah, and Wyatt our best. And I hope Will can go hunting again next year. I want to turn the clock back. As I said, I want this to be more about who you are and what makes you tick than about being governor. I want to go back to grade school. What's the most important lesson you learned? All of us learn things early. What's the most important lesson you learned when you were in grade school?
I'd actually give my dad a lot of credit for that. My dad was incredibly busy starting a company. He started a company the year I was born, spread out kind of, and he spent a ton of time on the road, but he not only was incredibly involved with us, he coached every team, made every event, and was, even though I know he wasn't there every night, it felt like he was there every night, even though I know he was gone working a ton. But it was this whole idea that the bigger community matters. And I look back, and when I'm 10, I can vividly remember my dad starting a new business, 3 young kids, and still really involved in Knoxville. Most things I think we learn by seeing more than we do by having somebody tell us about it. I can't ever remember my dad giving us a talk about community involvement. He just did it. So it became kind of part of the deal.
What do you remember him being involved in the community?
Always real involved in our church, always real involved in the University of Tennessee, which he was grateful. He wouldn't have gotten to go to college except he got a football scholarship, and he really felt like that kind of changed his life. So he placed a huge kind of premium on the importance of higher ed. For him, that was University of Tennessee because it gave him the opportunity. So church, UT, and then a lot of community, more social agency things. United Way was a big, and still is a big passion of his.
So that was really a lesson at home, though. Is there anything you remember from that grade school experience that stands out?
I'd have to think about that. One's a little harder to think about. I think it's, and again, but when I think back to that time, so much of what I think of is back to kind of what you're learning at home that translates into the rest of the world. I think part of it was the importance of social interaction. I mean, it mattered, what you acted like, who your friends were, all those sort of things.
I had a teacher teach me to brush my teeth. I think over every morning. Moved to high school.
All right.
And that's where we really began making decisions. What's the most important decision you recall making when you were in high school?
Well, it's probably a series of events. When I was a junior, I think for the first time ever, I started thinking about the bigger issues of faith and what was true and what wasn't, and how it related to everyday life. And so the honest answer to your question is fall of my junior year, I decided that best I knew how, I was going to try to follow Jesus. And right after that, about 2 weeks after deciding that, got a call at school, heard you need to come home, found out that my mom, who was really young, 42, had a heart attack and died in the middle of the day. And so all of that kind of gets very kind of real and put into action real quick.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I was actually going to ask you later. How did that impact you, and how did that change your life?
I've told people losing a parent early is a little bit like having a house fire. You don't realize how much you lose until over time. Like if your house burns down, it's like, oh yeah, I lost grandmother's wedding album. Oh yeah, I lost my Little League baseball uniform. Whatever it is, all the things you realize. And it's sort of like that with, I think, for me, it definitely was with losing my mother when I was 16. At the time, it's really hard, and you're incredibly upset. But really, it's later, as life goes on, you realize, oh, that'd be really great. I mean, my mother would love to see this.
Great. In college, does anything stand out as a decision or a turning point in your life?
Well, the very first day I met Chrissy, and I decided the very first day I liked her. It took her a while to decide to like me back, but the very first day I met Chrissy, and I'll say I think there was something else, kind of part of that process somewhere in there. I started out off as a very indifferent student in high school. You know, freshman, sophomore, half of my junior year, somewhere along the way, I decided to move from the back of the class to the front of the class and to listen, which sounds really simple, but I don't know that I actually ended up studying all that much more, but I really just decided to listen and gained from that. And so I went from being a mediocre high school student to going to a fairly rigorous college and doing really well, mainly just from a decision to take learning it a little bit more seriously. Actually, a lot more seriously.
Were you a good student?
I was mediocre in high school. In college, pretty did okay.
Best friends. You remember best friend from grade school?
I do.
And what they meant to you?
Yeah, it meant every Friday night at my house, every Saturday night at his house.
Really?
And but I think then, you know, your friends are around mutual interests and backgrounds and, you know, adventures you can get into together.
Does it get you in trouble to tell us who your best friend was?
No. He actually lives here in Nashville now. A guy named Matthew Gallivan. And it's funny, we were best friends in elementary school. In high school, kind of went different directions, and then so ends up, you know, 30 years later, we end up both living in Nashville.
Interesting. High school?
High school, I probably had 3 or 4 best friends. I don't know, I'd have one person, but then one of my high school friends, not best friend, but we went to the same college together and became best friends, and still to this day are, you know, he's one of my 2 or 3 best friends.
And who was that, and what did he mean to you?
A guy named Chip Denton, and Chip and I had gone to school from 7th grade really through college, and I think we both kind of started thinking about the bigger questions of life sort of at the same time and went through a lot of the same patterns. In college, we both were convinced we were going to teach when we graduated from college, we were going to go teach high school for 2 years, go to seminary, and both be pastors. And Chip did that. When I got to be a senior, my dad said, "Why don't you come work for us? You'll see what, you know what high school life is like. If you really want to be a pastor, you ought to at least see what business looks like. You'll have a way to relate." And so I went to work for a pilot for 2 years, which turned into, I think, 22 years. Because I really, once I got there, we got real involved in our church, and I decided pastor really wasn't what I was called to do.
Okay, more on that in a few minutes. If you didn't like that series of questions, it was my idea. If you did, it was my wife Cindy's. And so we will listen to your ideas, so feel free to share them. Let's transition not to being governor or today's issues, but politics in general. When was the very first time you ever remember thinking about running for office?
I don't ever remember really seriously thinking about it until maybe a little bit more than a year before I ran for mayor, maybe a year and a half out. I take it back, but more than that, maybe a year and 3/4 out. And there was an existing mayor in Knoxville who'd been there for 16 years, Mayor Victor Ash, who was term limited. And so the conversation in town got around a lot to who's going to run for mayor, would you be interested? And at first, I was not interested at all, but over a period of time of exploring it and talking with people, became convinced it was the right thing.
You've told me in the past one story that greatly influenced you there down in Florida. Will you share that one with us?
Is this one about my kids?
Well, no, I don't know that one, but tell us that one too.
Well, sometimes your kids can speak a lot of truth to you. So I thought if I'm going to run for mayor, I ought to go talk to my kids. At the time, my son Will was a junior in high school, and he said, "Well, when would it be?" And I said, "It'd be the fall of 2003." And he did the math, said, "Well, I'll be gone to college then. So I don't really care what you do." And my middle daughter, who's real thoughtful, said, "Tell me the pros." And I said, "Well, I think I'd like it's a great way to make a difference in your community. I think it kind of fits some of the skills that I have." He said, what are the negatives? I said, well, it won't be fun having people say, you won't like it, and I won't like it when people are in the newspaper saying mean things about you and running commercials that you don't like. And, it's a very visible deal that, people aren't always going to agree with you. And she looked at me, and she's, at the time, 14, says, well, that's a real selfish reason not to do something. So I go, okay. And then my 12-year-old says what all 12-year-olds think, well, you can run, just don't lose. It'll be way too embarrassing. So.
I really had in mind, that's a great story, but I had in mind the conversation you had with Bob Corker in Florida.
Oh, that's actually a really good question. So just so happened at spring break that year, my family and Bob Corker's family were both down in Florida at the same place. We've been friends for a long time. He and my brother were college roommates. And we went on about a 20-mile bike ride one day, and I said, Bob, I don't get it. Bob had just been elected mayor of Chattanooga about 3 or 4 months ago. Why would anybody want to be a mayor? I really thought I can't imagine anything less desirable than being a mayor. And he said, well, do you care about your community? I said, yeah. And he said, have you served on lots of different boards and headed this agency and that? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you can make 10 times as much difference being a mayor as you can all that other stuff combined. So I thought, all right, so somewhere between, Santa Rosa Beach and Seaside Beach, I decided to get serious about it.
Good. You were on a bike ride when you did that.
We were.
You ride bikes a lot.
I do. I still do. So it's a little different now. You have SUVs follow you when you ride, but but I still ride a lot and run, exercise.
That's
work.
why Les, head of your security detail, is getting to be so trim.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's although he gets paid to ride bikes.
What do you get out of bike riding?
Two things. One,
Some of us couch potatoes.
That's right. I think there's a huge benefit just in being physically fit. I think better, feel better. I just think there's a lot of truth in the fact that the better you feel, the better you work and act and everything else. The second thing for me, it really is a way to get away. I mean, it's a way, whether I'm running or riding a bike, it's a great way to go clear your head. So I still will today. I have a lot of night things, so I'll actually come over here a lot, and the school's nice enough to let me use their facilities, and I'll work out for an hour, clears your head, and then you go to the meeting that night, and it's not like you're worn out at the end of the day.
Which you did tonight.
I did. I want to be clear in case you ask any hard questions.
How am I doing?
So far, so good, thanks to Cindy.
You're young, by some of our standards, really young. What's next?
One thing about being in politics is no matter what you're doing, people assume, well, you're doing that so that you can do the next thing. And I really, if you asked me when I ran for mayor, would I have run for governor, I would have told you no way. And I really didn't ever think I'd do this, and really didn't get really serious about it till, again, about a year and a half or so out, I guess about 2.5 years out, when people said start thinking about it. So I started the process again of talking about it. But I really don't know. I mean, if you ask me, bet what you'll be doing when you leave being governor, either in 2.5 years or hopefully in 6.5 years, I'd bet I would go back into business. But I really have. I mean, if you'd asked me 10 years ago would I be here, I would have said no way.
Would you like to be president someday?
No, I actually, this is going to sound like a political answer. It's not. I really don't think so. I don't know that some people, you watch what's happening in these political campaigns and you wonder, like, how could he say that? How could that candidate say that or this? And let me tell you, it's really hard. And campaigning for that long, like you have to, part of you has to really like it. And some people, I love governing, campaigning, I can take or leave. And I don't know, I think you have to decide, am I really willing to go give 2 years of my life to run like they do and be all over the country raising money and doing everything?
We could do a bus tour across America.
Bus tour. Tom and I worked together in the campaign. Tom loves the bus tour part of the campaign, which mainly consists of me getting out speaking a lot of places and him planning where we're going to eat next. So. Dairy Queen sales went up 5%.
Hey, whoa! You're going to get me in big trouble. Okay. You're going to get me in big trouble. Let's stay on that for a minute because this goes a little further than I intended to go, but I think it says some important things about you.
Itch your nose if I'm saying too much.
No, you're doing fine. Just on the Dairy Queen. liking a campaign, not liking the way a lot of campaigns are today. We were actually in a group with Leadership Knoxville earlier today, and there was a lot of cynicism about political campaigns, political campaign ads. When we did your campaign, there was a strong commitment from you to do it at a very high level, and we actually had the episodes with the commercials where I proposed something more traditional in terms of a negative, and you absolutely vetoed it, and I had to stay on the bus that night and write a different commercial. Give me your thoughts and reflection about that.
I think two things. Part of it is it's just part of it. It's not who I am. I'm not by nature. I'm somebody that's going to always look for a solution instead of a fight. And I'm not saying one's right and one's the other. It's just that's kind of what my nature is to look for what's the solution. So I'm not. Some people love getting in a campaign and going toe to toe and swinging. I don't. It's just kind of not. It doesn't feel right to me. But I think secondly, I do think a lot of people are over it. A lot of people see the ads and go, that's not going to make me more likely to vote for you. If anything, it's going to just make me more likely to not vote, period. And, people ask me all the time, how come fewer and fewer people vote? I think a lot of it's that is omnipresent media that shows everybody every wart you have, and then second, people just get turned off by the nature of it.
But from your experience as mayor, as candidate, as governor, you obviously believe that you can be successful without going to those extremes.
Well, I think you can. Now, so believe me, and there's a whole lot of people would say you'd be a lot more successful when people went against you in the legislature, if you punished them or if okay, somebody didn't vote for you, well, the old thing, well, you'll never see another bulldozer build another road in your district or whatever it is. But I don't. If you really are in this, because, and I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm the virtuous one, and everybody, because I'm not. But if you really are in it, saying the end is to get to the best answer, then I think you have to be yourself and do your part in trying to get to the best answer instead of just saying I'm going to do everything I can to make you get to my answer.
So why do you think most people in politics end up not being like that?
Well, because it works.
Or do you agree?
Yeah, some. I think two things. I think the process itself, it's incredibly hard to stay yourself. And one of the things that helps is to have people around you who've known you a long time, who you can go back to and say, all right, what do you think? And even though you were sword teasing saying you were pushing me to do other things, on the other hand, the reason I asked you to work with me is we've known each other for a long time, and you were going to be very committed to the idea of, Bill Haslam will be best when he can just be Bill Haslam, and you might push me to a degree, but you weren't going to go past that.
Right.
So that's part of what helps. But it's really, I know everybody gets frustrated when they see candidates out there. I can't tell you how hard it is to be a candidate. Just to be, to stand up on a stage literally for 2 years and let everybody, throw food at you and examine every wart that you have. I compare it all the time to being in junior high school when you were the last one to get to the party of the room, whatever, and as you walked in, everybody's, looking at you and, saying snide things behind your back. It's kind of that, take yourself back to being 14 and being the last one to the event, and that's kind of what it's like being a candidate for 2 years.
And some of us with you were aware of that sensitivity early. You seem to have gotten beyond that.
Some, yeah. It's like I said, the first time I ran for mayor in 2003, it was a lot harder than I thought it'd be. Not the physical work, not the campaigning, not raising money, not knocking on doors. Just being a candidate is a big adjustment. And on a personal level, like I said, unless you've done it, it's a little hard to describe that. But every time you do it, it gets to be a little bit more natural. The other thing that's hard is, as a person of faith, you're saying, hey, I ultimately believe the story's not about me. Okay, hopefully that's why you're running, that's why you're doing it. But as a candidate, what are you saying? You're saying, I'm the guy. Vote for me, I'm the best. And it's just, those are kind of hard clothes to get used to wearing.
Well put. You endorsed Romney earlier than some of your colleagues. Would you like to be his running mate?
There's a whole lot better people he could pick, both experience-wise and politically. So if I was advising him, there's about 100 names I'd give him before mine. And I mean, I'm not just saying that to sound modest, but I really would say it. I mean, I'm somebody that's been a governor for a year and a half. There's a lot of people that would be way better equipped, both for the political campaign piece and would have a lot better knowledge of foreign issues and a lot of other things that I'm just probably not prepared to go stand up on a stage and argue right now.
Okay. Do you have a political hero?
You know, I've got, if I had to pick one person, I'd probably pick Howard Baker. And I'll tell you why. When I was a junior in college, I got an internship to go up and work in Washington. And you have to be, I guess, over 55 to appreciate, this doesn't sound like a big deal at all, but at the time, the big debate was whether or not the U.S. should give away the Panama Canal. And now most people go, I don't know, do we own it or not? I mean, most people don't even know now. But at the time, that was the issue. And Baker was the Republican leader of the Senate. And a lot of the most conservative people in the Republican Party thought that giving away the Panama Canal was heresy. And my job was, this is before emails and before everything, my job was literally opening letters and getting them to the right person to respond. And so then, you know, I thought I was going up to deliberate in the Senate when they asked me to be an intern, but I opened mail for a while. But the mail was 100 to 1 against giving away the Panama Canal, okay? And Baker was getting all sorts of grief. At the time, he still wanted to be the president someday. But in the end, he decided, at the time, Jimmy Carter is the president, not a super popular president, Republican or Democrat. Got a Republican leader of the Senate, Democrat president who's pushing it, and he goes with the Democrat president who's not really popular because he really thought it was the right thing to do. And I remember thinking, this guy's nuts. But he really, really felt like it was the right thing to do. And it probably, I mean, you could argue it cost him his best shot at being president.
Mm-hmm. But that experience didn't inspire you to run.
It really did. I mean, I actually loved being in Washington, and it did leave me thinking it really matters who we elect. I just didn't think that I was necessarily that person. But I mean, I remember thinking because when you're, as you know, Washington is full of people between the age of 20 and 30 who are positive they're going to be, you know, the next at least senator, if not president. And I remember living with a bunch of folks who thought that. I remember thinking, I don't think I'll ever live up here.
And you were what age then?
I was a junior in college, or no, sophomore in college, so I was 19, 20.
So you came back on what track, career track?
I came, at that point in time, I still thought I was going to come back, I got a degree in history. I was planning on going and teaching for 2 years and coaching, and then, like I said, going to seminary and being a pastor.
So Will's history major and ambition to teach is following in your original footsteps.
I have a son who graduated from college, worked for our family business for 3 years, and then has left to pursue a PhD in history. So yeah, I mean, he comes by it legitimately, I guess.
That's cool. Do you have a hero in general? Other than your dad?
Well, that's going to be my answer. So
it
really is. I mean, my dad to me models somebody who really does live this life that's not about himself, and he's made an incredible impact. You know, beyond beyond that. I mean, that was my easy first answer. I'd have to think about that. Beyond that, do I have a hero? Let me come back to that one.
Give us your dad's nicknames.
It probably says a lot about it. He's had a ton. We called him Neck growing up, which was short for redneck, because we were the kids with the short haircuts, and you know, it was like this was in the early '60s. You know, only rednecks make their kids have hair that short. But we've called him. He's probably had about a series of about 50 nicknames. So part of what my dad was able to do in our family is make it a fun atmosphere where all of our friends wanted to hang out there, but you still knew he was the father. Cool.
You referenced earlier that you and Chip Denton were thinking about being pastors. Tell us about thinking about the ministry and how you got on that track in the first place, and you referenced how you got off of it, but how did you get on it in the first place?
Well, I think part of it, I think, as I grew from, like I said, 16 years old on, becoming more and more serious about my own faith, as I grew more that way, it felt like, well, that's what you do. I mean, if you're really serious about following Christ, you become a pastor. And it also kind of felt like it fit my personality. I'd spent a lot of time involved in some high school ministries as a college student, and I liked that. So it kind of felt natural. That's where I would end up.
Was there a spiritual model or mentor in that period of time?
A little bit. When I was in high school, again, and that's kind of, we all get our models, or not all, but sometimes we see somebody else walk that path. There was a guy named David Bowen who had graduated from my high school, went to University of Virginia, came back, taught at our high school for 2 years, and left and went to seminary. And he's now, and actually then got a PhD here at Vanderbilt, and now is a pastor in North Carolina. But kind of his path felt right to me at that point.
Interesting. What appealed to you about it?
Again, I think, the nature of being a pastor and helping, and that fit, it just felt like it fit well for me.
Okay.
And I'll let me say this before we leave that. In the end, I remember saying this when I became mayor in Knoxville. I thought I was running for mayor to be the CEO of the city. And I actually found out it was much more like being the head pastor. And by that I mean at a church, you have pressures from all the different constituencies. The choir people think you should invest more in the music program. The parents think you're not putting enough into the high school and middle school ministry. The senior citizens think that, et cetera. And that's a little bit what it's like being a mayor, is taking all these valid constituencies, or governor, and trying to figure out how to balance them.
Did feeling or thinking of it that way help you cope with being mayor?
It actually did, and in some ways, then actually helped back to the campaign part. It actually helps me when I'm campaigning, the sense of, if this is what you're called to do, that's what you're called to do, even though a campaign might not be the most fun thing. It also helps you in the middle of a campaign. If you really do believe that people are created in the image of God, that's a good thing, and it helps remember that in the middle of some campaigns. I'll just leave it there.
I won't ask you which ones measured up and which ones didn't measure up. My next question was actually, having experienced and thought about both, how does ministry compare to politics?
Well, I think in some ways it's that. They're both very visible, number one. Number two, you have multiple constituencies. And then I think the third thing is both of them are professions where everybody has an opinion, right? I mean, you can go to everybody in your church or synagogue or wherever you worship, and everybody has an opinion about the pastor, the rabbi, whoever. And that's just kind of how it is, right? I mean, right now, if you worship somewhere, you have an opinion. And it's the same way about serving an elected office. You have to get used to the fact that everybody has an opinion about you. And might be fair, it might be accurate, it might not be, but they still have an opinion, and you just kind of have to get over that.
What's the biggest difference between the two?
Well, I think this. In ministry, there's a lot more consensus about what the mission is. As a mayor or governor, I could go talk to, even in this room, which is, I can't totally see because the lights are on us, but I'm betting it's a fairly homogenous group in terms of income and background and education level, et cetera. But even in this room, there'd be pretty disparate opinions about what the state should do. Okay, if I said, tell me what the state's business is, you'd say, some states would say, protect our most vulnerable. And others say it's, create jobs. Others say it's focus on education, all of which are right, by the way. But it's hard to get consensus around what the exact mission is.
Interesting. The greatest, which is a better fit for you, looking back on it now?
This, no doubt. I mean, like I said, as much, and I talk like I hated campaign. I didn't totally, but as wearisome as that process can be, I love doing this. I really do. I mean, I tell people all the time, if it looks like I'm having fun in this job, it's because I am. It's a great, and I felt the same way about being mayor. I mean, the whole 7 years I was mayor of Knoxville, I remember thinking, this is great. This is exactly what I was made for.
So no second thoughts about going into the ministry?
No, I never have. And like I said, after about 3 or 4 years of kind of thinking that maybe where I should go, like I said, I've never questioned that again.
I'm going to give the audience a question or two in a couple of questions. So if you want to be thinking about what you want to ask, we'll take a couple of questions. I think there are a couple of roving mics that if you'll make yourselves visible, we'll do that in a couple of questions. Any second thoughts about going into politics?
I really haven't, I mean, it's like I said, both being mayor and being governor, I have loved, and I really mean that. I mean, even on the hard days where you think, gosh, you know, everything that walked through my door today was a problem, I've still loved it.
What makes a hard day?
Well, legislature's in session right now. I think for me, the hard days are maybe the frustrating ones where I feel like there's a lot of problems that shouldn't be. I mean, there's some problems that just are, but there's certain problems that shouldn't be, but get to be big deals, and that's a little frustrating to me. I think, you know, and yet you're wading into it just like you would something that, you know, really is a critical issue.
Yeah. What's the most important thing you think you've learned after a little over a year in office now?
I've learned a lot actually being governor. I think on just a pure political side, I'd say no matter what you've done before, understanding how the legislative process works, not just the technical, here's where a bill goes, et cetera, but the give and take involved in what that should look like. There's a learning process there. I think the personal side is it's a huge, being governor's a lot, this is going to sound funny, but it's a lot bigger deal than I thought it was. I know it sounds silly, sorry, but it is. It's just I didn't, you know, you know this, but you go to a small town in Tennessee, and it's a huge deal that the governor's there. I mean, you know, you go to visit a school, and the whole town comes, you know, or I can think of 100 examples. I mean, everywhere you show up, you know, 7 TV crews show up, and people want to talk, et cetera. So it's a bigger deal than I thought it was.
But that's okay.
You know, it's fine. It's just you understand it comes with a lot of authority and a lot of responsibility and a lot of visibility. All three of those mixed up.
Good. We've used the word that it fits. It's comfortable. What fits you about politics?
Well, to me, I think I'm always better when I feel like something really matters. And I do feel like the things that we do matter. I mean, I think we can make a big difference hopefully in the education future of Tennessee, or in providing the very best service for families with, you know, mental health issues or whatever it is. So I like that. And I actually like all the personal interaction. There's a lot of moving parts in government, from your staff to your cabinet to legislators to constituents to people who helped you get elected. All those moving parts, I kind of like all the give and take there.
What doesn't fit you?
Well, like I said, I'm not by nature a real contentious, you know, fighter person. And there's times in this where there are times you just got to say, hey, you know, we're going to the mat on this one.
Okay, good. Is there a question out there? All right, we got one right over here. And now, no current events or issues about who Bill is, who the governor is.
Governor, inquiring minds would like to know, do you have any inside information on whether or not Peyton Manning is coming to That is a current event, but I thought maybe it's not.
We'll let that one pass.
I texted him to say, free temporary housing in the governor's residence if you come to Nashville.
Did you really do that? Because he is a friend, right?
It'd be terrific if he came here. Peyton is the real deal, and he really is. It'd be great on the field, but he's a great guy.
Okay.
Governor Haslam, Tierney Bates.
Hey,
Hey,
how are you?
So how are you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. I just want to know, what was your greatest leadership mistake that you've made, maybe being mayor or governor so far?
Yeah, I think it's. I'd have to think about mayor, and probably mayor's easier because governor, I'm just so new. It's probably hard to have the perspective there. But I think it's when you don't have the right people in the right places. Just like in business, you need to act decisively. But it's a little harder to do that in this world because when you act decisively in this, it ends up on the front page. And so, but yet you got to do the right thing. If you don't have the right people in the right spots, it's really, really bad news.
And having had the honor of helping him put some of those people in place, this administration, for a longer period of time, has hung together without casualties. What do you attribute that to?
Well, one, we focused really hard in that transition period, and Tom helped during that as well, of getting the right people. And I really looked for two things. I looked for people who knew the subject matter, number one, and number two were people who weren't about themselves and didn't have big egos. And I think that really has helped. We don't have a lot of cabinet folks and staff folks who think that the story's about them, and I think that's helped. I mean, we're not perfect, and will we have all 22 of those commissioners and top senior staff 2 years from now? I doubt it, but it has worked out a lot better than I even maybe hoped or expected.
Okay, good. We have a question back here.
Governor, under the headline of...
Is that you, Ralph?
That's me.
That looks like Ralph even in the dark.
Should I go high?
No, you're good.
Under the headline of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, what was an event in your life that you felt was one of those kinds of events that, boy, it came close, but it made you stronger in the end?
Great question.
That's a really good question.
You want to do this next time, Ralph?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Actually, two things. My mom dying when I was in high school comes to mind quick on the personal side. On the campaign side, my first run for mayor was really close. Polls closed for 2 or 3 hours before they figured out that we won. We won like 51-49. And the whole campaign was tight. And I remember at the time thinking, darn, I wish I read about other people that had these easy elections and won. Or had just kind of nominal opponents. And I remember thinking, darn, I wish I'd have had that. That would have been nice. But having that situation was great because it forced me to learn quickly how to defend what I believed in terms of the right way to do government, kind of right off the bat. That was the first time I'd ever run for office. I would have loved at the time, I would have thought I would have loved for my first race to have been an easy one. It wasn't. It was a really hard one. And I honestly think that was the best thing that happened to me politically in that sense.
Okay, is there one more? Here's one over here.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. One, I want to say thank you because I don't think you give yourself credit for the ministry that you live out in public life and public service. So thank you. That's a beautiful ministry. Number two, and it may be, someone can't hear me. Number two, and that is, what do you think, or what do you desire your legacy to be? Because you're already impacting young children, college students, people in the community. So you're creating a legacy, even though you may not realize it. What do you want it to be?
Interesting. I got asked that question by somebody else earlier today to a group I was speaking to at lunch. As governor, I really think the measuring stick should be 10 years from now to say, did we really move the needle on education reform and education results in Tennessee? We overuse the word reform. We can't stay where we are in terms of being 40th, et cetera, and we can't in terms of being 40th in math and reading skills, and we really aren't preparing the workforce that our companies need, and I hear that across the way. I think that's on if you just ask purely what do you want to get done, back to the more personal side, I would hope it'd be that there is I I say all this like I'm the only good guy in politics, and I'm not that good a guy, and I'm not the only one. But I hope it is that there is another way to do it, that you can really try to always be looking for the best answer, and that if you bring the best people together looking for the best answer, you'll make some real progress.
By popular means, we're going to do a couple more questions. Lydia there, and then the red dress here, and then there was a... All right, let's do those three, and then we'll get back to conclusion.
Governor Haslam, I'd like to hear what your vision of successful Tennessee in the global marketplace would look like, other than just selling more Jack Daniels, I guess.
That's really a great question, because we are in a global market. I mean, we're working on recruiting a company to build a plant here, and part of it depends on, whether the trade agreement between Brazil and Mexico holds up, et cetera. I mean, the issues of how people that impact jobs growing in Tennessee really are so much more widespread than even I thought, and I thought they were very international in scope. So I think if we can sell Tennessee as a place where we have a prepared workforce, we have a work environment that's very conducive to business and job growth, whether it be the legal environment, the tax environment, or the quality of life, all those things kind of play an equal balance, then I really do think we can sell Tennessee as the place where you can locate. We have an incredible geographic location. We do have a great workforce in terms of work ethic and spirit, and we'd have to add to that just a better prepared workforce in terms of skills development right now, particularly in the technical, engineering, math type areas.
Governor, it's been delightful this evening. I'd like to ask about your relationship to the young man sitting at the table with you. He's been a legend in Tennessee politics for 40 years or thereabouts. How did you get to know Tom Ingram? Not just how did he get hired by the campaign, but on a personal level, how did you get to know Tom?
Really good. That's a great question. It actually helps. I actually first met Tom back when he worked for Lamar, when Lamar was governor, and knew Tom through that. And then later, Tom moved to Knoxville and got to know him a little bit better, and actually did some work he and his partner at the time, Lewis Levine, did some work. A lot of y'all know Lewis. Did some work for our company and got to kind of see Tom's strategic assets. Then at one point in time, a little later, I got to know him a little better personally. We ended up in a men's group together of 6 of us at that point.
6 of us.
And got to know Tom even better over a couple of years, 3 years, before we all kind of started moving around different places. And here's why in the end I decided for me to hire someone like Tom. Obviously, he has great background and experience, okay, and it's hard to hire somebody that has that. Second, as I said before, he knew me. But third, what somebody like Tom can do for somebody like me who's running for governor the first time is he can help define whether a problem's a big deal or not. When you're the candidate, everything feels like a big deal. I mean, the littlest story in the newspaper and you're sure you're ruined, And Tom had the ability to say, big deal, worry about it, or nobody will even know what it is tomorrow. And so the fact that he knew me well and had the ability, that kind of discernment was really helpful.
Okay, one more. There's been a hand up right here, Lydia, and then we'll come back to the table.
Thank you, Governor. My question, can you tell us the role that your wife played in your family as well as the success of your career?
Yeah, it's actually a great question. I wish Chrissy was here. And, when you marry, when you fall in love when you're in college and marry somebody, you don't really have a picture of, I wish I'd say, well, I married her because she'd be a great mother, et cetera. I mean, like most 19-year-olds, I thought she was really cute and, et cetera. But Chrissy actually was an incredibly not just involved mother, but committed. I mean, our kids, there's zero doubt in their mind that their mother thought they were, the most important thing going on in her life right then. And so that sense of kind of well-being that they have, I think she helped instill in them. Interestingly, Chrissy was, if you ask people who went to college with us at Emory, everybody would remember Chrissy. She was I used to say big woman on campus, and I realize that's not a real flattering term, but whatever the female equivalent of a big man on campus is, okay? Everybody would know Chrissy. She was the real deal. Hardly anybody would know me, okay? And she was the one who was the finance major and thought she would have a really involved business career. For various reasons, she decided not to do that, to basically focus on raising, for her, the right thing was to focus on raising our kids. So it's been interesting now as she's kind of really, she's taken the first lady role real seriously. She literally works 50 hours a week on things. So it's been fun for me to kind of see her gifts and skills get used that I always knew were there, but hardly anybody else ever saw because she decided for a while to put them in the background. So, and then I'll say this, it's incredibly helpful as a candidate to have a wife she went to all 95 counties with me and heard me give the same talk 2,000 times and ate all the bad chicken and shook all the hands. And did that mean the difference in getting elected? Maybe. Because she was that committed and that likable.
How many of you would come again to hear the other side of the story with Chrissy in Bill's chair? Okay. I'll work on that. I think that would be a fun thing to do. I want to stay with Chrissy for a minute because she's a very unusual candidate spouse. I think she's an outstanding first lady, and obviously, to hear you tell it, an outstanding spouse and mother. I watched the two of you on the campaign trail, and now as governor and first lady, and you have a uniquely close and comfortable relationship. How'd you get there?
Her patience, mainly. I don't know that I have a great answer there. I think part of it,
Was it always that way?
I think like a lot of males, it took me a while to understand what in marriage you say the two are become one. You're going to kind of subvert your will to each other. It took me a while to kind of get a picture of what that looked like, and just to be honest, I see like my son being a husband now. I'm like, dang, I wish I'd have been that good when I was, So I think like I said, most men tend to think we see the world our way pretty much, and oh great, we're married. Well, come on down, join me in what I'm doing. She'd say it's still a little bit that way.
But she will tell you.
Yeah, she will.
We're here tonight with a number of students who are probably in process or will be in process of making their own choices about spouses. What advice would you give them?
That's a really good question. I think I had two or three things. I'd emphasize marrying somebody who's committed to making it work. And I think if you look at all the statistics today and, the number of marriages that don't work, it's, we have become a pretty selfish people. And folks like, well, I'm not, you're not helping me be myself, or you're not helping me realize myself, et cetera. And I was fortunate enough to marry somebody who said, I'm committed to us. And I think that's made a lot of difference.
Good. Any general advice you'd give to this audience, particularly the young people amongst us who are making important life decisions?
I don't know that I have any unique wisdom by any means. I think, one, I'd really try to find something that you liked. And we tend to like the things that we're good at. And so I'd find those strengths and areas of your own giftedness and figure out, okay, I love it when I do this. It's like somebody said, find those things that make you go, yes. Those things that when you do them, you go, yes. Find those things and then figure out how to make a career out of them.
Who said that? Yes.
That's this good friend of Chrissy's. Actually, we was over at our house for dinner the other night, and she was asking us that. Like, what are the things about being governor and first lady that make you go, yes? And I thought that's a pretty good way to put it.
Good way to put it. Great way to put it. Tell us something we've never heard or read about you.
I don't even know who's here at this meeting. This is really dangerous.
That's the reason the house lights are down.
That's right, no kidding. They're going to come up and it's going to be all newspaper reporters.
Well, now, there are a couple out there.
That's all right. Let's see. My first interaction with state government was when I rear-ended a state trooper.
Really? Where and when and how?
You were in the governor's office at the time, so I was hoping I didn't get a nasty call from you. I was just out of college, just gone to work, was driving down I-81 up near, not too far from Kingsport, and it started snowing. And it was just, all of a sudden, it went from being clear roads to just white covered, like doesn't happen in Tennessee very much. And I'm southbound, heading home. I'd been up in Pennsylvania, was driving back, looking for a location for pilot. Driving back down, was tired, and hour and a half from home, and I look northbound, and there's a tractor trailer that is overturned in the median. And so I look ahead of me, and I see a state trooper, and the lights are going. And I'm pretty sure, remember, the road's covered. I'm pretty sure, though, that he's in the median because that's where the tractor trailer is. And so I'm really just going 30 or 40 because it's snowing. But I'm in the left-hand lane, and a car is paralleling me in the right-hand lane. And as I get to about, 60 yards away, I realize, no, he's actually parked in my lane. And so I put on the brakes, but as you can imagine what happened. So in super slow motion, I just go in until I crash into the rear of this state trooper's car. Immediately, smoke starts pouring out of his trunk. And I think, oh, God, the guy's car's getting ready to blow. Well, I've actually hit my front, I've knocked the front tooth out, so I got blood all in front of me. But I think, this guy, he's not getting out. And I'm thinking, oh, no. And so I jump out there, and it's snowing, and I have on leather shoes, and I'm slipping and sliding. And get there, open his door, grab him by the arm because I'm going to save his life. And he looks up and grabs me by the tie and pulls it down, and he gets in my face and calls me a few names that he probably wouldn't call me today if he was still And he pretends just to cuss me out. And the smoke is because the fire extinguisher in his trunk went off. And he was mad because those of you who can remember, that's when the state was going from, you meanies in state government were making them go from Crown Victorias to Chrysler K cars. Yeah. And he was going to have to trade in as a Crown Vic for a K car, and he was ticked.
That question's a keeper. You'll hear that again. All right. Anything you'd like to say in closing or question you have?
I appreciate the chance to do this. And I think the benefit to doing what you're doing is I think it does. One of the disadvantages to doing what I do, it's hard to give straightforward, heartfelt answers because the questions aren't. When you're standing in front of 10 reporters who are sticking a microphone saying, "Tell me how you feel about such and such a bill and what you're going to do," it's hard. You don't really have time to go into the nuance of why you think something, and here's the pros and cons on each side, and here's how I decided how we could get the balance right. So I think the conversations you have, I think, really are helpful so that people can understand, all right, these folks who are making this decision, what led you to be there?
Great. Thank you for doing this. Thank you all for being here.